Conquering an empire is easy, maintaining it is hard. Yet, most empires survive for at least a century. Let's quickly define my criteria for an empire to be included here. Skip ahead if you want to. An empire will be defined as a state that had an emperor or a large enough country to generally be considered an empire. However, it must have been a monarchy to be included here, although that pretty much only excludes Nazi Germany. Now as for short-lived, it just means 60 years or less. Also special thanks to myself for making this iceberg. First layer, attended school. This tier has empires you have at the very least heard of before, even without knowing a lot about history. Also there are timestamps in the description, so feel free to skip empires you already know enough about. The first empire you think of when hearing short-lived empire is probably the Macedonian Empire. It was founded and ruled by a single person, Alexander the Great. He was born in 356 BC in Pella, the modern-day Greek region of Macedonia, and the son of Philip II, King of Macedonia, who actually laid the foundation for Alexander by gaining dominance over all of Greece. A very impressive achievement. And all of that while not even being considered a real Greek by other Greeks. The ancient Macedonians undoubtedly spoke a language related to ancient Greek. However, ancient Macedonians and ancient Greeks regarded themselves as being related, but not the same due to having different traditions, speaking different, although related tongues, and other differences that seem minute to us but were of great importance to ancient Greeks, like Macedonians drinking their wine unmixed. Truly barbaric. Although, since the kingship of King Archelaus, the predecessor of Philip II, the Macedonian kings embraced Greek culture in the land. Alexander himself was tutored by Aristotle. But that's enough about the ethnic background of Alexander the Great. He ascended the throne in 336 BCE, after his father got assassinated. Question for the CK3 player. What is the best way to secure your rulership after ascending the throne? Duet. There was a revolt in Thebes by Theban Democrats caused by rumors of Alexander's death. Alexander crushed them and basically enslaved everyone in the city and raised it, which made the other Greek states cower in fear and fall in line. Then he invaded the Persian Empire like it was no big deal. He had a pan-Hellenic policy, visible by him installing democracies in Western Asia Minor. Most cities surrendered without a fight. He conquered the entire Persian Empire like it was a world conquest speedrun. After Asia Minor, the Levant followed. He received a peace offer from the Persian Shah Darius, which would have ceded all lands west of the Euphrates, but Alexander had larger plans. He then conquered Egypt, which was controlled by Persia, and then the west of Persia, after organizing an administration in Egypt. Afterwards, he invaded India until roughly around the Indus. He would have kept going, but his soldiers were understandably tired. His emperor would, however, not survive his death in Babylon on June 13, 323 BCE. He had no appointed heirs, so the empire was split between his generals and the kingdoms became independent after some succession shenanigans. This was the beginning of the Hellenistic period. His empire lasted for mere 13 years, but to this day people still talk about it. The First French Empire. The First French Empire needs little introduction. In 1789 the French Revolution began, which resulted in a constitutional monarchy. Lots of head chopping, the First French Republic in 1792, which Napoleon successfully defended as general against reactionary foreign powers, and then later the coup of Brumaire happened in 1799, which resulted in the triumvirate with Napoleon as first consul and two other unimportant consuls also existing. This was the beginning of Napoleon's rule. He defeated the Austrians at Marengo. In 1801, he personally concluded the Treaty of Lunéville with Austria. In the same year, he made a concordat with the Pope to gain the support of the French clergy. In 1802, there was a referendum if Napoleon should be made consul for life, with over 99% voting yes. Now, he truly had absolute power. In 1804, he finally declared the French Empire, which was approved in another plebiscite with another over 99% approving. The Napoleonic Wars continued, as you know. He managed to conquer half of Europe and turn it into client states, and also greatly expanded the de jure borders of France. However, Napoleon did the mistake of invading Russia, which went horribly. 500,000 casualties, of which at least 300,000 were dead. The Second French Army was destroyed at Leipzig on October 18, 1813. Peace talks in February 1814 amounted to nothing, and Paris surrendered on March 13, 1814. Napoleon signed his abdication on April 11th.
They banished him to an island. But he came back.
He was exiled to Elba, which isn't exactly far away from France, and returned to France in March of 1850. And the newly restored Bourbons weren't exactly competent, so Napoleon was warmly welcomed. First French Empire, second round, let's go. Napoleon was defeated at Waterloo on June 18, 1815. and had to abdicate 4 days later. Napoleon's son, Napoleon II, might have been emperor during the short period between Napoleon's second abdication and return of the Bourbons, from June 22nd to July 7th, but that is disputed, and so came to an end the First French Empire. German Empire. The German Empire also needs little introduction. No, I'm just joking. Anyway, the German Empire also needs little introduction. It lasted from January 18th, 1871 until November 9th, 1918. It was founded after 3 wars of unification, during the chancellorship of Otto von Bismarck, a conservative politician representing the interests of the East Albion land-owning Junker class, who used German nationalism as a pretext to expand Prussia's influence. The first one was the German-Danish War of 1862, where Prussia and Austria beat up Denmark together. The following peace deal was rather unstable and bound to cause a war between Austria and Prussia, which happened in 1866. The Austro-Prussian War, also known as the Brothers' War, where Prussia and its 2 German allies, Italy was also there, fought and won against Austria and its German allies in just 7 weeks. Prussia and its allies formed the North German Federation, with the member states keeping autonomy, while the North German states allied with Austria, so Hanover were annexed into Prussia. Although Saxony was coerced into joining the North German Federation, rather than being annexed by Prussia. The South German states were also forced to vote in an election to create a German customs union parliament, but the anti-Prussian candidates won. That aside, the South German states were forced to enter a defensive pact with Prussia, which would be triggered in 1870, after Napoleon III declared war on the North German Federation, or then added a telegram that made it seem like the German Emperor Wilhelm I insulted the French ambassador. France was start, which will be discussed in the next entry. If we ever go into politics, remember, nothing unites more than a common enemy. So, while still at war with France, the German Empire was declared in 1871, in the Hall of Mirrors of Versailles, a grave insult to France. Skill issue on the French part, I'd say. Anyway, under Bismarck, Germany entered into an alliance with Austria, now known as Austria-Hungary, in 1879. Bismarck wanted Austria to remain united, so German Austria doesn't join Germany. You have to know, there was a culture war between Protestants and Roman Catholics, a Kulturkampf, with the Prussian elite being Protestant and adding another 8 million Catholics would have threatened Prussian dominance. However, this alliance also arguably turned Russia into a natural enemy, because Austria's conflicts in the Balkans with Russia now turned into German conflict. Germany also grew more Anglophobic over time, even during Bismarck's reign. Germany also became a colonial empire by inviting everyone to Berlin to discuss how to carve up Africa. This, of course, created another area where tensions could arise between Germany, Britain and France. And Germany wasn't a very nice colonial power, committing a genocide in German Southwest Africa, killing around 100,000 people, Moserero and Nama, and brutally crushing a revolt in German East Africa, leaving a third of the colony's population dead, 250,000 to 300,000 natives. The end of the German Empire is well known. Tensions in Europe have been rising until in 1914, the last drop to make the glass overflow happened, the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. You know the rest of the story. World War I, Germany managed to accomplish its goals in Eastern Europe after 3 long years, but the German economy was basically tied to a total victory due to all the spending. The Western Front was, however, not turning in Germany's favor, especially after the Americans entered the war. There was a revolution in Germany. The Kaiser Wilhelm II was forced to abdicate and the German Empire was over, lasting for 47 years. Second French Empire. 1848, the year of revolution. In February, France became a republic again, the second one. And of course, Napoleon, not yet the third, won the presidential election of December in the same year, with the support of the Party of Order, which won the parliamentary elections in May. Napoleon III started concentrating power around himself, and wanted to run for a second term, which was constitutionally forbidden, and he lacked the 3/4 majority to change the constitution. So he carried out a coup d'etat on December 2nd, 1851. His uncle would be proud. In November 1852, he held a plebiscite where he was approved as emperor. His largest foreign policy goal was to make France a great power again, at the cost of a European order set up by the Vienna Congress. The Crimean War gave him an opportunity to flex French muscles, while also getting Britain on his side. In 1858, after an Italian tried to assassinate him, he grew sympathetic to the Italian cause. That doesn't line up. So yeah, he allied with Piedmont, Sardinia to carve up Italy together and expelled Austria from the peninsula. But despite all the French blood spilled on Italian soil, the Austrians could not be pushed beyond Lombardy. So he concluded a peace with the Austrians that didn't include Venice being ceded to Sardinia-Piedmont. Sardinia might have felt a bit betrayed, but France still got Savoy and Nice, even if it gave up on creating a central Italian kingdom. But hey, the Papal States still exist as well, so that's pretty swell. Outside of Europe, he expanded with French colonies in West Africa and Indochina. He also tried to invade Mexico in 1861, while the US was busy, which will be expanded upon in a later entry. But basically it failed. He also talked with the president of Ecuador about creating a kingdom of the Andes, but that was too Victoria for the wonders of our Madrid. He had a positive attitude towards Prussia, but didn't gain any German lands from it for his neutrality during the First and Second War of Unification. The Prussians even blocked him from purchasing Luxembourg from the Netherlands in 1867. His reign, and with that the Second French Empire, ended after he declared war on Prussia over national honor and lost hard, and I mean really hard. Him losing was already unexpected, but him being pushed and captured so quickly was truly shocking. A Third Republic was declared in 1870, he then went on to live in England. Austria-Hungary, or as I like to call it, the kingdoms and lands represented in the Imperial Council, lands of the Crown of St. Stephen. It was founded in 1867, after Austria firmly got pushed out of Germany by Prussia, also losing Venice in the process. Hungarians were the second largest ethnic group after Germans, and already caused trouble before, like in 1848 when they nearly broke away. So Kaiser Franz Joseph granted Hungary full internal autonomy, so they wouldn't try to break away by taking advantage of Austria's weakness. Thus, the Austrian Empire and the Kingdom of Hungary were now separate nations in a customs union, sharing the same monarch, a common foreign policy, and remained the same in matters of war. But there was no shared cabinet, prime minister, or anything like that other than a shared monarch. And the customs union had to be renewed every 10 years. So yeah, that sounds pretty stable. In 1878, Austria-Hungary occupied Bosnia, but it officially remained Ottoman until Austria-Hungary annexed it as a condominium in 1908. In 1914, World War I broke out, thanks to Austria-Hungary sending a ridiculous ultimatum to Serbia as a response to the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, despite its own investigative team doubting Serbia had anything to do with it. The empire was not to survive the war. It fared poorly on all fronts except arguably the Italian one, and even then it could only maintain a stalemate without German help. Making a separate peace with the French in 1917 was not to happen, and revolts broke out throughout the empire. The treaties of Saint-Germain and Trianon, the Austrian and the Hungarian half, were broken up respectively. The empire lasted for 51 years. Tsardom of Bulgaria. The Tsardom of Bulgaria was officially founded in 1908, but it basically already existed before. After the Russo-Turkish War of 1877 to 1871, Bulgaria was made independent as a Russian ally in the Treaty of San Stefano. However, the great powers opposed, so instead the Treaty of Berlin was signed, shrinking Bulgaria a lot and splitting it in two. Bulgaria, an autonomous duchy under the Ottomans, and East Rumelia, an autonomous province of the Ottoman Empire. The two unified in practice in 1885, but Eastern Rumelia de jure remained a part of the Ottoman Empire. In 1908, Bulgaria gained total de jure independence and the Tsardom began. It expanded in the First Balkan War at the cost of the Ottomans, but then attacked its former allies of Serbia and Greece, because Bulgaria wanted a larger share of Vardar Macedonia, which was inhabited by people that consider themselves to be close to Bulgarians. I hope that's neutral enough phrasing. Bulgaria lost that one and wanted its lands back. So when the Central Powers promised to give them Vardar Macedonia and some more, Bulgaria joined the war and lost. Bye bye phrase. World War II. Bulgaria reluctantly joined the war on the Axis side, received Thrace, Vardar Macedonia, and Southern Dobruja, and then lost again. It kept Southern Dobruja though. The monarchy was abolished in 1946, and Bulgaria became a Soviet satellite state. The Tsardom lasted for 38 years. Italian Empire. Italy was founded in 1861, but it didn't yet control all of the lands it wanted. Until 1918, Italy expanded by annexing Venice, Rome, Trento and Trieste, while also expanding its colonial empire, although failing to invade Ethiopia in 1895. After World War I, Italy didn't gain as much of Dalmatia as it had hoped, and it lost its lands in Turkey. That and social tensions enabled the rise of fascism. The new prime minister, later Duce, Benito Mussolini, tried to pacify Libya, which Italy conquered in 1911. He also tried to increase Italy's influence in Greece, but failed. In 1935, Mussolini tried to invade Ethiopia again, expecting France and Britain to not condemn him due to the Stresa Front, but international pressure caused him to denounce Italy and for the front to collapse. In 1936, Ethiopia was conquered thanks to the disregard for human life and international law of the fascist Italians. Mussolini proclaimed the Italian Empire. The king of Italy was now the emperor of Ethiopia. In CK3 terms, that would make Italy a part of Ethiopia and not vice versa, but let's ignore that. After that, Italy occupied Albania again in 1939. It had done that before from 1917 to 1920. That aside, short before the collapse of France, Italy entered the war, hoping to make some easy conquest despite not being prepared for war yet. Italy performed very poorly due to that unpreparedness. They always needed the help of the Nazi Germans for their endeavors. In Africa they lost, they couldn't take Greece on their own and needed the Germans to invade Yugoslavia to reach Greece. In 1933, Italy was pushed out of Africa and Mussolini was deposed. But World War II was to continue in Italy, in the form of a brutal civil war. The empire formally ended in 1947, in the Treaty of Paris between Italy and the Allied powers. However, Italian East Africa already fell in 1941, and with that Ethiopia. So the Italian Empire lasted for either 5 years, 7 years if you consider 1943 the end, or 11 years if you consider the peace treaty the end of the empire. Manchukuo. Yes, Manchukuo was indeed an empire, at least officially. It was a Japanese puppet state created in 1932, and officially known as the State of Manchukuo from 1932 to 1934, and from 1934 to 1945 as the Empire of Great Manchuria, because it had the last Qing Emperor Puyi as its nominal ruler, but he had no power at all. It was run by the Japanese military. The Japanese government initially didn't even want to occupy the region. The Japanese army in Korea and Guangdong acted on its own in late 1931, under the orders of the Governor General of Korea, Ugaki Kazushige. In 1937, the Second Sino-Japanese War broke out. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in 1941, and by 1945 lost with the Soviets occupying Manchuria and all that. It is probably a familiar story to you. And Manchukuo itself is just a playground for other powers to fight in. Let's discuss the internal affairs of Manchukuo rather than World War II in Asia. Manchukuo was founded on the basis of ethnic harmony. Manchuria was a very multicultural place. Han Chinese, Manchus, Mongolians, Koreans, Hui Muslims, Japanese colonizers, and even some Russians that were living in the area. And among people from the Soviet Union were also Poles, for whom Manchuria became a refuge after they lost their homeland. Different religions were also practiced. Manchus were Confucianism and had their temples. Poles were Catholic and Jewish with their own churches and synagogues, and Russians were Orthodox with their own churches. However, the majority of the population was Han Chinese, called Manchurians. Their language was called Manchurian, but it was just Mandarin. They were the clear majority. Most of the judicial system was made up of Manchurians. Manchurian was a mandatory subject in elementary schools, and many Manchurians also learned Japanese, giving them an advantage to finding jobs. Manchukuo was used to show the greatness and multiculturalism of the greater East Asian co-prosperity sphere, but it was just the exception, not the norm. Even just south of the border in Korea, the Japanese were discriminating and colonizing the population, by forcing women into sexual slavery. Paradox gamer. Finally, the second tier. Most of these should be familiar to nerds with thousands of hours in Paradox games, but you might not know the details. Before the next entry, over 95% of you aren't subscribed, so please subscribe for more videos about often not discussed history, including the next two parts of this iceberg. North Sea Empire. Honestly, you all should watch Vinland Saga. Anyway, the year is 987, and Sweyn I ascended the Danish throne after revolting against his father, King Harald Bluetooth. Yes, that Bluetooth. In 1000 AD, he conquered Norway with the help of a Swedish king. Although he nominally shared power with his allies, which also included the Earl of Late Eric. Afterwards, he turned his attention to England in 1003, under the pretext of punishing England for the St. Brice massacre of Danes in England on November 13, 1002. In 1004, he left England but returned in 1013 and successfully conquered England. He died a year later and was succeeded in England by Canute I, later to be known as the Great, while Canute became the king in 1016 after having to defeat the former king of England, Ethelred II. 3 years later, he also became the king of Denmark, after the mysterious death of his brother. Then, in 1028, he conquered Norway. A year prior, he also led an expedition into Scotland, through which he achieved recognition from 3 of the Scottish kings. In 1035, Canute died and his empire did so with him. Latin Empire. It is 1198. The Third Crusade had mixed successes, being able to capture land in Syria and Palestine, but not Jerusalem proper. So Pope Innocent III declared a Fourth Crusade. Also 3 years earlier, so in 1195, Byzantine Emperor Isaac II Angelos was blinded and deposed by his brother Alexius III. Isaac's son, also named Alexios, whom I'll simply call Alex to avoid confusion, later fled to Philip of Swabia's court. Boniface of Montferrat, a vassal of Philip, asked the Pope for approval to launch a crusade to depose the Byzantine Emperor and replace him with Alex. In 1202, the Crusader army from the Crusade, which was declared in 1198, arrived in Venice, but it was only a third of the projected size. However, the Venetians were contracted for the larger estimated army. So now the French Crusader army and the Venetians are incurring larger costs than even anticipated. So the Doge of Venice, Enrico Dandolo, told the French that if they helped him capture Zadar, which was rebelling against Venice, that they'd suspend the debt until it could be repaid in loot. Zadar, however, was occupied by the Christian king of Hungary, who also pledged to participate in the crusade. So of course the Pope vetoed recapturing the city, but nobody listened to him. Why let the veto from the guy who literally called for the crusade get in the way of some good old-fashioned looting after all, right? But for Pope Innocent III, having all his crusaders be excommunicated also wasn't good, so he absolved them, but not the Venetians. Anyway, envoys from Philip of Swabia arrived in Zadar with an offer from Alex. In exchange for the crusaders going on a little side adventure to topple his uncle also named Alexios, our Alex would give them a ton of money, make the Byzantine church submit to the Roman church, and join the crusaders on the crusade against Egypt. In 1203, the crusaders attacked the city and laid the destructive fires of the citizens overthrew the Emperor Alexius III. So our Alex, now Alexius IV, became the new emperor alongside his father. He tried to fulfill his promises but went short on money. That, alongside a hatred for Latins among the citizens of the city, resulted in him being unpopular and overthrown in a coup in late January 1204. The crusaders saw this as a betrayal and declared war on the Byzantine Empire. On April 12, 1204, the city fell and was sacked to a degree that the city wouldn't recover until the Ottomans made Constantinople their capital and reconstructed the city around 200 years later. They committed horrible crimes which Pope Innocentus III condemned, but he's no longer of relevance. Then 12 electors, although I made a typo though my script says elevators, 6 Franks and 6 Venetians selected a new emperor, ruling 1/4 of imperial domain. The West would be divided. They elected Baldwin of Flanders emperor, and thus the Latin Empire began in 1204. It would last until 1261. How did it end? Well, Emperor of Nicaea. Obviously, the Byzantine nobility did not just accept their new Catholic, Frankish overlords, who destroyed the marvel of the empire. Many lands broke away and proclaimed themselves the rightful rulers of Eastern Rome. The most prominent of these was the Emperor of Nicaea, founded by Theodore I Lascaris, recognized as the rightful Byzantine government in exile. He fled to Anatolia in 1204 and established himself in Nicaea, gradually gaining control over western Anatolia. In 1208 he crowned himself emperor. Then he died in 1221. After him came John Vadatzes, who sought to and failed to retake Constantinople. He wanted to do it before his rival despot Fyodor Angelos of Epirus or John Arsene II of Bulgaria. All of them failed, although John Vadatzes defeated Fyodor at least in Bulgaria. What a crossover. Anyway, he died in 1254. The 2 emperors after him defended against the Mongols. But a really important thing happened in 1259 when Michael Paleologus, I'm sorry Greeks, became emperor. He retook Constantinople in 1261 and was crowned Emperor Michael VIII. Oh, and his dynasty would live on until the fall of Constantinople at the hands of the Ottomans. Actually, another branch ruled Montferrat until 1533. So was this empire truly short-lived? It was a continuation of the Byzantine Empire, and then restored the Byzantine Empire, so I let you be the judge of whether it counts as a short-lived empire. Korean Empire. Korea has been a part of China's sphere of influence for centuries. In 1875, the westernized Japan forced Korea to open itself up to foreign trade, after the US did the same thing to Japan. And they also told Korea that it should declare itself independent from China in foreign relations. Then Japan and China started sponsoring different lobbies. China, the conservative one, and Japan, the modernizing forces within the Korean government. In 1884, this resulted in an attempted coup by pro-Japanese reformers, but Chinese troops stopped it under General Yuan Shikai, who will be relevant in a later entry. The two didn't feel like fighting quite yet, so they signed the Lee-Ito Convention and both agreed to withdraw the troops from Korea. But later Japan kind of felt like kicking China's ass over Korea, and they got a casus belli when the poor Japanese guy who organized the earlier coup was assassinated in Shanghai, and then they even shipped his body to Korea and displayed it as a warning. And then, to add injury to insult, the anti-Western Donggak rebellion broke out in Korea, and China sent troops to aid Korea at the behest of the Korean king. Definitely a violation of the Lee-Ito Convention. But Japan also sent in troops without asking the Koreans. So China and Japan then fought each other because they were fighting the same enemy. despite both agreeing to not send troops to Korea. The rebels even laid down their arms, because who would want two great powers using your country as a battlefield? But that didn't help. And surprisingly for us today, but very surprisingly for the people back then, Japan won. What is important for our story is that Japan forced China to recognize Korea's independence, and so Korea was free to be thrilled by Japan. For example, members of the Korean royal family were forcibly married to Japanese nobility. But the Korean king Gojong wasn't really a fan of being in Japan's sphere of influence, so in 1897 he declared himself emperor to serve as his country was on equal footing with China, Russia and Japan. He also attempted to westernize the country. That all is pretty cool, but I mentioned China, Russia and Japan. China's out of the picture now, but Russia still also wants Korea in its sphere of influence. So in 1904, Japan and Russia fight, and Japan wins somehow, probably by sailing all the way to the North Sea and naval invading St. Petersburg. Well, at least that was how the Russian High Command expected to lose, but instead they lost on land in Manchuria. In 1905, the Treaty of Portsmouth is signed. What is important for us is that Korea is firmly a part of Japan's sphere of influence, without any foreign powers nearby to oppose that. And our good friend, Emperor Gojong, was forced to abdicate in 1907. The Japanese already began the prosecution of Korean culture then. And in 1910, the country was formally annexed. The Korean Empire lasted for 13 years. Ostrogothic Kingdom. Alright, sit down guys, it's time for a 2-hour documentary about the fall of the Western Roman Empire and why it never happened. Nah, I'm just joking. I mean, I would be down for that, but that has already been done. Okay, enough yapping. Time for historical yapping. So the Western Roman Empire in 476, it's not doing so well. The breadbasket of the Empire Africa was controlled by the Vandals. In 468, the Western Emperor with the help of the Eastern Empire assembled a huge fleet to retake Africa and save the empire. 1,113 ships and over 50,000 personnel, and it would have succeeded if it wasn't for the absolutely incompetent, if not downright treacherous Basiliscus, fumbling the battle before it even truly began. So yeah, there go any hopes of the empire having enough resources to feed an army. But sometimes it takes a barbarian to do what a Roman can't do. The hero or villain of our story is Odoacer, born in 433. In 470, he entered Italy with the Skiri tribe, not to conquer it or anything but to join the Roman army. In 475, the general Orestes overthrew Emperor Julius Nepos, who flew to Illyria for Fallen Eagle campaigns. Odoacer led a revolt against Orestes because he did not make up on his promise to give the tribal leaders land in Italy. 1 year later, Odoacer was proclaimed king by his troops, deposed Romulus Augustulus, son of Orestes, and also the Roman emperor, and then exiled him. But he got to keep living a pretty good life on an estate. That is traditionally considered the end of the Western Roman Empire. However, Odoacer strengthened the Senate and Roman institutions continued. He also respected the Nicene Church despite being Arian Christian, but he also accepted nominal overlordship of the Eastern Emperor Zeno, who accepted him as a patrician but not king, because to Zeno the Western Emperor was still Julius Nepos. Odoacer conquered Dalmatia in 480. Then in 484, Ilus, Magister Militum per Orientem, asked Odoacer for help to depose Zeno and replace him with Leontius. Odoacer agreed. Rookie mistake. Zeno convinced the Rugi tribe to rebel, although Odoacer defeated them in 488. The Vandals also invaded Sicily, but Odoacer recovered the island. Northwestern Italy, the Visigoths invaded. But you know what? This isn't our empire. Odoacer isn't our main character. No, this is all just the context. Now our main character shows up. The man, the myth, the legend, the goat even. Theodoric of the Ostrogoths. Zeno appointed him king of Italy in 488. Theodoric invaded Italy a year later and by August 490 captured nearly all of it. Odoacer took refuge in Ravenna, the capital of the Kingdom of Italy. The city surrendered in 493 and the merciful Theodoric invited Odoacer to dinner. Maybe they could rule Italy together. And he killed Odoacer. And his family. And his supporters all over northern Italy. Alright, our goat is now the undisputed king of Italy, but why do I keep calling him goated? And I'm not the only one, his epithet is the Great. Okay, yeah, now I can excuse murdering a family, but massacring Odoacer's supporters all over northern Italy is a bit too cruel for goat territory. But why is he called the Great then? Well, basically he single-handedly revived the Western Roman Empire, with the exception of Britannia and most notably Africa. Those two he did not manage to include. So how did he do that? Was it truly a revival of a Western Empire, or just a net of vassalages and alliances centered around one man for one generation? Well, Theodoric used a tactic tested and proven throughout the ages: marriages. If you ever played Crusader Kings, you know that the only purpose of a child is to either be married off or be used for eugenics. and Theodoric did not have time for eugenics. Theodoric himself married the sister of the Frankish king Clovis. Through other marriages, expanded his influence upon the Burgundians, Vandals, and the Ostrogothic kingdoms. And he did also use his military to defeat the Gepid in 505 and conquer Pannonia, roughly modern-day Hungary. In 507, Theodoric became the regent for his grandson Amalaric, the infant Visigothic king after the Visigoths got their ass kicked by Clovis. By 511, Theodoric took direct control over the Visigothic kingdom, personally, as an entity separate from Italy. But still, that's quite a sizable realm. And he nearly also conquered the Vandals, because the new king executed the wife of the former king for trying to marry in succession. And he just happened to be Theodoric's sister. He wanted to conquer the Vandal kingdom in 526, but died of dysentery. The Ostrogothic kingdom continued, but Theodoric's achievements didn't last. The Franks kept taking more and more land, and then the Gothic War happened, or in other words, Justinian conquest of Italy. It ended in 544. And the empire, or rather kingdom, lasts from 493 to 553. 60 years, and barely making the list. Second Mexican Empire. Remember during the French Empire entry where I talked about France invading Mexico? Well, that's the story. The US was busy with its Civil War, so enforcing the Monroe Doctrine was a bit difficult. France under Napoleon III thought this was the perfect opportunity to intervene in Mexico. A second time. This first time it was over pastry, which is a ridiculous story, but sadly won't be talked about on this iceberg because it didn't result in an empire. Anyway, I say that word a lot, don't I? Anywho, Mexico was internally divided between progressives and traditionalists. Furthermore, the country had many debts, especially to Europe. In 1861, Spain, the UK, and France all agreed to do some gunboat diplomacy against Mexico, so Mexico repays its debts. They landed at Veracruz in December, but Spain and the UK realized that France didn't want to settle the debt issue. It wanted Mexico. So they peacefully negotiated with Mexico and withdrew their forces. But France had different plans. He wanted a Mexican client state and invaded the country. The French managed to take Mexico City and declared the Second Mexican Empire. And because it was a French puppet, it was of course led by a French nobleman. No, I'm just kidding. By a Habsburg, so an Austrian, Maximilian von Habsburg, brother of Franz Joseph. Napoleon III hoped to improve his relations with Austria that way. They had success in central Mexico, but everywhere else, the Republican opposition held out. France got lucky when the Civil War ended, but Lincoln was shot, because his successor wasn't that invested in intervening to protect Mexico. However, thousands of veterans crossed the border to help Mexico. Finally, in January 1866, Napoleon III announced a withdrawal until 1867 to ensure US neutrality. However, that actually happened earlier in December 1866. Then in February 1867, Mexico City fell. The Count at Orizaba decided against making Maximilian abdicate. He tried to muster up men to return to Mexico City, but that was going to be nearly impossible, for the Republicans controlled most of the country by this point. Although President Juarez of the Republican side was nearly captured. The imperialists lost in the end, and Maximilian was executed by firing squad despite many European powers pleading for him to be spared. This happened on June 19, 1867, and the empire ended, lasting for 4 years, from 1863 to 1867. Sikh Empire. A Victorian classic, the Sikh Empire. The Punjab was split between the Durrani Empire, which claimed control over the Sikh, and a loose Sikh confederacy, who resisted both the Afghan Durrani Empire and the Mughal Empire. However, after gaining control over the eastern Punjab, the members of the confederacy just fought each other whenever they weren't fighting the Afghans. But in 1799, one man wanted to change that situation and unite the Sikh once and for all. His name was Maharaja Ranjit Singh, and in 1801, he was crowned emperor. He kept defeating the Afghans and expanded the country in all directions. Internally there was also peace, and the different religious groups and cultures were respected. Sikhs were only a minority after all. Western military experts were also welcome, so the Sikh army was a fairly modernized army. In 1839, our goat sadly passed away. After him, the next 3 emperors all only had short reigns because they were assassinated. Then the new emperor was a child. The country effectively was ruled by the military, which also had been expanding a lot in size. In 1845, war broke out between the British East India Company and the Sikh Empire. 1 year later, peace was made and valuable northern provinces were ceded to the British. It is unclear why the Sikh lost the Battle of Firoz Shah in 1845, which was the turning point of the war. Some say treachery, and some say a tactical retreat was the best move. In 1848, the Second Anglo-Sikh War broke out. The Sikh lost the war and were annexed by the British East India Company in 1849. So the Sikh Empire lasted for 50 years if you count 1799 as the beginning, and 48 if you count 1801. Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. Imagine, if you will, some well-known Chinese guy called himself a brother of Jesus Christ. Now imagine, if you will, that this results in the Civil War, which is the second deadliest war in human history, ahead of World War I. Alright, that was the entry. Next entry. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, fine, you may have some more details. Hong Xiaoqian, I hope that was correct, was born in 1814 in Huashan, Guangdong province. China was ruled by the Manchu Qing dynasty. Hong himself was a Hakka, who were considered a branch of the Han. He was an intelligent young man trying to pass the civil service exam, but the civil service exam is very difficult, so he failed over and over again. But one day, in 1837, after his third failure, he received a vision from an old man with a golden beard. And the wise man handed Hong a sword and said, This world is overrun by demons. Kill them all. And Hong knew who were the demons. The Manchus. In 1843, he failed the exam again. Lol. But in the same year, his cousin, Li Jingfang, pointed out a weird book on Hong's shelf that Hong had forgotten about. A book by a Chinese missionary examining the basics of Christianity. Long story short, Hong now thinks he's the brother of Jesus Christ, yet he pretty much ignored the teachings of the Bible, especially the New Testament. Compassion? Nah. Old Testament worth is better. Anyway, in July 1850, after some planning, Hong and his schoolmate, Fang Yunshan, who had converted a couple of years earlier, launched the rebellion. On January 1st, 1851, he proclaimed the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom and himself a Heavenly King. Their communal policies and anti-Manchu rhetoric attracted many people. Over 1 million people, in fact. They marched north and captured Nanjing on March 10, 1853, their new capital. One of the largest cities in China had just fallen to religious fanatics that want to slaughter all Manchus. But at least women were now people, so that's pretty neat. And another expedition heading for Beijing failed. On other fronts, they enjoyed victories, however. There was also an attempted coup by Yang Shuxing, the Minister of State, which failed. He and thousands of his followers were executed. Another general, Hida Kai, abandoned the cause and took many supporters with him. By 1862, Nanjing was surrounded by the Qing, and after a devastating siege was captured in July 1864. That's how the Taiping were defeated. 20 to 30 million dead people. The second deadliest war in human history. Because some dude said he's the brother of Jesus Christ. The Taiping Heavenly Kingdom lasted for 13 years. First Mexican Empire. Following Napoleon's occupation of Spain in 1808, the Spanish Empire in Hispanic America was collapsing. Mexico was one of the countries breaking away starting in 1810. In 1821, Mexico, under Vicente Guerrero and the General Agustín de Iturbide, declared independence from Spain in the Iguala Plan. However, the independence leaders were very Catholic, and as in other parts of Hispanic America, it was the Criollos who most supported independence. The Criollos were Europeans born in the New World who, however, in the social hierarchy of Spanish America, were second after Peninsulares, so Spaniards actually born in Spain. And the Criollos saw independence from Spain as the perfect way to be as privileged as the Peninsulares. Anyway, here are the 4 principal ideas of the Iguala Plan. 1. To establish maximum independence. 2. To maintain the monarchy of the Spanish King Fernando VII or another member of the Spanish crown. 3. To establish Catholic Christianity as the sole religion. 4. To establish a union between all classes of society. Regarding the second article, that didn't happen. They didn't find any European noble willing to take the title, so they made Iturbide the emperor in 1822, and it lasted for a whole 2 years before the plan of Casamata replaced the Iguala Plan in February 1823, proclaimed by the most controversial figure in Mexican history, Antonio López de Santa Anna. It aimed to establish a republic because Iturbide dissolved Congress. In just 6 weeks, nearly all provinces turned on the emperor in support of the plan of Casamata. Iturbide in response reinstated Congress, but at this point nobody liked him, so he abdicated and fled to Europe in March 1823. If you enjoyed this iceberg so far, feel free to subscribe while I work on the next 2 parts. I was planning on making this iceberg as 2 parts rather than 3, but I couldn't just say about each empire. The empire lasts from X to Y. It was this big and yeah, next entry, because that wouldn't leave you any more knowledgeable than before watching. So I had to split it into 3 parts or my upload schedule would have suffered too much. Plus I wanted to see how this video would perform before pouring hours of my life into researching the final layers. Anyway, thanks for watching until now. You're epic, and your attention span is within the top 1% of the populace, even if you watch this in the background. Until the next video, and if I forgot any empires on my iceberg, do comment them below. Oh my god.